Hello everyone! Today we're gonna have a grammar lesson about modal verbs that refer to the present and the future. This lesson is on page 32, section 3b. As you can see, we're gonna start our lesson with some tips on traveling. While traveling abroad, people might face different problems such as feeling lonely, getting lost, or having difficulty with the language, and many others. So, here are some tips that help you fit in. After reading these tips, we have to take a look at all the highlighted verbs. All these verbs are modal verbs or auxiliary verbs. What do modal verbs do? They modify the meaning of the main verb in the sentence. Of course, you have studied some of these modal verbs before, but today we're going to explain them in a more specific way. If we take a look on verb can, we see that it is followed by verb be, which is an infinitive verb without to, or a base form verb, and this goes for all the other verbs like can't learn, may find, must try, etc. Now, let's look at the first tip and replace the word traveling with the pronoun it. So the sentence now is as follows. It can be lonely. And in the second tip, we have the sentence, you can't learn. We notice that verb can doesn't change even with a third person singular. So, modal verbs are the same for all pronouns. Examples, I can study from home, he can study from home, they can study from home. Now, let's look at verb can't, which is the negative form of can, or mustn't, which is the negative form of must. We notice that we simply add not to the modal verb to form the negative. Except have to, which is not a modal verb, it is used as a modal verb for convenience, where we add the auxiliary verb do. So, in the negative, it is don't have to or doesn't have to. We still have the question form. If we have a modal verb, we simply invert it with a subject. For example, can you help me? I inverted can with you. But with verb have to, we have to use do or does, so we say, do you have to or does he have to? To sum up, remember that modal verbs are always followed by the infinitive without to or the base form of the verb. Examples, can drive, should wait. They are the same for all pronouns, like I can, he can, they can, except have to, where we have to say I have to, he has to. And they take direct negative and question forms. We say we cannot. In question form we say can we. Have to in negative is don't have to or doesn't have to. And in question form we say do you have to or does he have to. So let's look at the sentence, you ought to plan to keep in touch. If you say to someone, you ought to plan to keep in touch, or you should plan to keep in touch, it means you're giving him an advice. So, should and ought to are used to express advice. Now, let's look at this sentence. You understand what you are supposed to do. It means what people expect you to do. So, be supposed to used to talk about rules that people believe or expect. Now, let's see the sentence. You don't have to be fluent. It means it's not necessary. So don't have to expresses lack of necessity, and you can replace it with don't need to or needn't. Now we move to the sentence. You must try to learn some key phrases. That means me as a speaker, I feel it's necessary or obligatory. So must expresses a strong obligation. You mustn't worry if you can't see or do everything. It means it's not allowed. So mustn't expresses a strong negative advice. To sum up, as noticed, modal verbs express many basic concepts, such as advice, obligation, necessity, and many others. To express advice, we use should or ought to. Should is used to express an opinion, give advice, or ask for advice. People should worry more about global warming. I'm giving my opinion here. What do you think? Should I take up this offer? I'm asking for advice. You should try to lose weight. I'm giving advice. Ought to is a synonym for should, but it is more formal, and it's rarely used in question form. For example, the negotiations ought to end soon. It's more formal than when we say the negotiations should end soon. To express obligation, we use must or have to. Must expresses a necessity felt by the speaker to do something, or it's a personal strong obligation. You must see the doctor at once. Have to expresses an external obligation, or when we have a rule. In England, you have to drive on the left. John has to wear a tie at work. To express prohibition or lack of necessity, we use mustn't or don't have to. Mustn't expresses a strong negative advice. We say, you mustn't smoke in a hospital. Don't have to, don't need to, and needn't, all of them express lack of necessity. We say, you don't have to drive so fast. We have a lot of time. It means it's not necessary to drive so fast. Or we can say, you don't need to drive so fast, or you needn't drive so fast. Be supposed to is a common phrase that functions as a modal verb. It is used to talk about rules or things that are expected to happen or to be true. Examples: I am supposed to get to work at 8 means I expect to be there at 8. The new James Bond movie is supposed to be exciting. It means it is believed to be exciting. Well, that's all for today. Stay safe.